Hey everyone, how are you? Today we're talking about business ethics, and specifically we're talking about Module 3, which is due this week, and that covers chapters 3 and 4. And so what we're doing for that is just briefly have an introduction to chapter 3 and 4 in the reading, and the assignments we'll talk about briefly as well. I've got those queued up over here in the Moodle shell. And so I'll start with the reading, though, very quickly and briefly, just to get you introduced to the reading. So Chapter 3 talks about prioritizing stakeholders. And in business, remember that the function of business is to earn a profit for the shareholders, the people that start the company, the owners. Shareholders, people that own a share of the company. If it's a private company, a entrepreneur, maybe the 100% shareholder of that company. If it's a public company, other shareholders or owners. When you buy a share of Apple stock, for example, you own a part of the ownership of that company. And so stakeholders are a little bit different than shareholders. Stakeholders are people who have a stake in the success or failure of the company and may not necessarily be tied to it. And I say success or failure. If I'm a vendor that supplies Apple, then my success, my income is dependent upon the success of that company. However, if I'll call you right back. However, if that company is a competitor and I'm competing with Apple, I may want Apple to not do well so that my business can do better. And so that is the kind of stakeholder relationship there. And so as we go through and look, we want to understand ethical impacts on stakeholders. What ethical obligation do I owe to this stakeholder that may or may not have ownership in the company, but is connected? So to give you an example, let's say I make a decision to go into a town and put in a big industrial service center, and it's going to impact a lot of different stakeholders. It's going to create jobs, that's a good thing, but it could disrupt some other economic things happening in the area. A good example is let's say that I run a charity, and our charity likes to feed the world, and we start dumping a lot of rice and grains into, let's say, Haiti, for example. Well, that seems like a good idea. Okay, we're going to give food away to people that really need it. But what about the farmers that are growing food locally and trying to make a living? And because of all this influx of free, zero-cost food, the locals are not going to go buy from the fresh markets and support the local farmers. And so the farmers have to fold shop. So, you have to be able to understand the stakeholder position in decisions that are being made and understand the ramifications and the second, third, and fourth order effects of things that you do and things and decisions that are made. So ethical basis of stakeholder claims, there's a couple different approaches: the descriptive, instrumental, and normative approach. The descriptive approach sees the company as composed of various stakeholder groups. The instrumental approach connects stakeholder management and financial outcomes. And then the normative approach considers stakeholders as ends in themselves rather than simply the means to achieve better financial results. So go through and read about those different aspects. And so stakeholder prioritization, which stakeholders are more important, or which ones do I care about being impacted and which ones do I not? How do I make those decisions? How do I understand the ethical framework in which to make those decisions? Let's say that I make a decision and it has no impact, no negative impact for humans, but it causes an animal population to be displaced or some vegetation to be destroyed. How do I make these decisions in an ethical framework? So you want to read about that and understand the different stakeholder interests and prioritization. And then this last part of the chapter, for chapter 3, talks about corporate social responsibility. What do you think that means? And so corporations come into communities, they transact, they earn a return for whatever product or service they're producing, but what responsibility does that organization have to society? What diligence does it owe to society? If I come in and I set up a big industrial complex and I'm building things, I'm making things, taking resources from the local economy, do I owe that economy anything other than me being successful? What is the role that corporations are supposed to play there? And so social responsibility is this idea that corporations should also be productive parts of society outside of what they produce, whether it be a good or service, just like individuals. If individuals just went to work only and went home and did nothing to help society, that probably wouldn't be very good, And so you want to, if these corporations, which by the way have personhood status under the law, they should also be a part of society and add value in other ways beyond the product or service. At least that's what corporate social responsibility talks about. And so looking ahead to chapter 4, it talks about the key concepts for chapter 4 deals with special stakeholders, society, environment, and government. And so corporate law and corporate responsibility, generally business entities have what's known as limited liability, meaning that if some type of harm occurs due to the business, the responsibility falls within the wall of the business and may or may not extend to the people who own or operate the business. And there's a lot of reasons to have that limited liability in place. A lot of businesses are required to have insurances to cover them in the event of harm or a loss. And so the main reason we have these limited liabilities, though, from a business perspective, is to encourage entrepreneurship and growth. Who would want to go in business and know that there's a high failure rate and there's also a high likelihood that if you got sued, that you would have to close your doors? There's a lot of businesses, big businesses, that are sued just tremendously every year. Think about a big corporation. Using Apple as an example, continued example, how many times a year do you think Apple gets sued? I have no idea, but it's got to be hundreds, if not thousands of times from all types of other companies and consumers. Apple actually did have a big lawsuit recently. It was against Epic Games. You might have heard about it. Epic tried to circumvent the system in which the payment rail basically within the Apple App Store for tokens inside the game Fortnite. And Epic tried to circumvent that and break the rules. Apple canceled their ability to host the game on their platform, and a lawsuit ensued. And the courts at this point, as far as I can tell, have sided with Apple. I'm not sure if that's been resolved or not, but Epic knew what they were getting into when they went into business with Apple. And yes, Apple does take a large percentage, to 30% of the revenue, but they provide all the infrastructure. So it's like, if I put up a product or service and somebody's willing to make that product or service go to millions of people, I don't have a platform to do that myself. I need a service to do that. And unfortunately, that's Apple has the App Store and is able to get that out and take that 30%. And so limited liability, though, like I was saying, limited liability or liability is limited to corporate assets, and shareholders, directors, and officers, you can see, kind of revolve around the corporation, and that liability is within that corporate wall structure. And so business corporations, our corporation's typical stakeholders include, but are not limited to, its customers, media, community, environment, government, and employees. These are the individuals and entities around the corporation that may or may not be a part of the ownership structure, but are a part of the stakeholder structure. And so balancing the many responsibilities of a corporation. Once again, remember, the primary reason a corporation exists or a company exists is to serve shareholders, to make money. And so If that is your primary mission, is that your only mission? And many CEOs, I think, would say no, that's not their only mission. They should try to make a profit, but if you can make a profit and do right by your employees, your customers, your shareholders, your stakeholders, the environments, and the government, and all the other people directly or indirectly connected to your company, why would you not also take that option? Why would you not also say, hey, we're not only a great product or brand or service, but we can also do something that makes the world a better place all around. And so I think it's admirable to want to have those missions. And so environmental justice is a big thing. You've seen this has been going on for quite a while now, this idea of going green, reducing carbon footprints, zero carbon emissions by X year or whatever it may be. And so there's a reason why these things are important, and corporations see that their customers in this particular example do value whatever issue that is being discussed. And some corporations pick certain issues that they really dial into. Some are very education focused, some are very environmentally impact focused, some are substance abuse or domestic violence, things like that. Whatever it may be, the corporation is attempting to do something on social justice or to do something to appeal to that social responsibility we talked about. And so environmental justice, corporations have this idea of corporate personhood that I talked about a while ago. So in the eyes of the law, they are a separate entity or a person, a de facto person. And if that's true, we want them to act responsibly the way a person would act responsibly. As an individual, I can't go out and throw waste just anywhere I want to, or litter, or dump harmful chemicals in the environment. If I dumped a bunch of chemicals in my yard, that could be problematic. Even if it's my private property, there could be a case to say that I shouldn't be able to do that. And so yeah, if I have private property and I lease it out to a corporation to dump chemicals that leaches into the groundwater, yeah, that's problematic. And so the last part of this chapter 4 is on public interest and sustainability, so be sure to go read that. Before we end the video, though, I wanted to go back to Module 3, talk about the assignments very briefly. This is about Amazon, and you'll read this case study and answer the 7 questions about it, and there is a video also to watch. Very interesting stuff. And then the second assignment, that assignment, by the way, is taken from Chapter 3. Second assignment is taken from Chapter 4, and it has a couple key things that Chapter 4 talks about. I didn't mention Tragedy of the Commons yet because I didn't want to give away, the answer to that question, but look it up. Be sure to answer those questions. And if you have any questions for me, please be sure to reach out by email. I'm happy to talk to you, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great rest of your week, and don't forget to register. Talk to you soon.